"Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel." She giggled when she walked through the door. Like nothing mattered. Luggage bumping against the hardwood. Heels clicking in that way she always loved when she wanted to feel powerful. I didn't say a word. Just watched her from the hallway mirror. She didn't know I was standing there. Not yet. She twirled. Twirled. "Home sweet home," she called. Like she was auditioning for a toothpaste commercial. Then she tossed her keys into the kitchen bowl, pulled off her blazer, and headed for the bedroom. I waited. I waited for her to go to that drawer. She always does. The top one in her nightstand, where she keeps her travel makeup bag, backup charger, and migraine pills. That drawer. And just like I knew she would, she opened it. That's when her body froze. Took exactly 2 seconds. One to process. One to panic. Because sitting inside that drawer, exactly where her charger should have been, was a photograph. Printed in matte, slightly curled at the edges. And right beside it, a handwritten note with 2 words in bold red ink. "I know." She didn't scream. She didn't cry. Not yet. She just stood there, frozen like a statue that had no idea it was about to shatter. I stepped into the doorway, deliberately slow, and leaned against the frame. "Long flight?" I asked, voice calm. Too calm. Her hand twitched toward the photo, but I beat her to it. Picked it up. Turned it to face her. "You looked happy here," I said. "Is that the same swimsuit you told me was too outdated for vacation?" The silence between us cracked louder than any shout could have. She blinked fast, swallowed, tried to gather words that weren't excuses. But I was already walking away. She followed me out of the bedroom, desperate now. "Wendell, it's not what you think." I stopped near the kitchen counter and tapped on my phone screen. The TV flared to life. Security footage. From our own home. She gasped when she saw it. Saw him. Saw herself. Her business trip started 2 days later than she told me. Because he was here, in our house, drinking wine from my glass, sleeping in my bed. She turned pale. And I finally spoke the only truth that mattered. "You came home smiling. I hope it was worth it." She stood there in silence, arms stiff at her sides like she had forgotten how to move. The screen behind me still showed the paused image, her in my bathrobe, pouring wine for a man who wasn't me. His face wasn't clear, but his hands were. On her waist, on her back, on what used to be mine. "It was just one time," she whispered. I turned to her slowly, trying to process how quickly she jumped to that line. No denial, no confusion. Just the kind of pre-rehearsed damage control that people like her think works on people like me. I wasn't angry yet. I felt hollow, like my insides had been scooped out and replaced with cold fog. "Was it?" I asked. She stuttered. It wasn't planned. He came over because I'd forgotten some documents and, from Phoenix. I interrupted. "That's a long way to come drop off papers." She blinked rapidly and stepped forward. "Wendell, please don't do this. Let's talk like adults. Okay? Talk like adults. Like this was some business merger gone wrong instead of a betrayal in my own house." I grabbed the remote and switched to the next video. This time the timestamp showed Thursday night. She had already told me she'd landed by then. But there she was, still in my house, still not in Phoenix. And still with him. She lunged for the remote. I didn't stop her. Let her hold it. Let her feel the weight of her own lies. "You watched these?" she said, her voice cracking. "All of them," I replied. "I set up the cameras because I kept forgetting where I left my wallet." "Funny, huh?" She started crying then. Not the kind of sobs you expect from someone heartbroken. These were frantic, panic gasps. The kind you hear when someone realizes they've been caught before they had a chance to rewrite the story. "I didn't know you had cameras," she shouted, her voice suddenly high and defensive. I almost laughed. That was her concern? So if I hadn't recorded it, it wouldn't have counted? I asked. "Is that how this works now?" She reached for my hand. I took a step back. "You were going to come home, act like nothing happened, and go on with life as usual," I said. "Smile, cook dinner, maybe kiss me like a fraud." She didn't answer. She just stared down at the remote like it might reverse time. But I was already done with the movie. I canceled your credit cards this morning, I said. And your name's off the joint account. Now her smile was gone, and my panic had turned to something else entirely. She didn't speak for a full minute. Just stood there with her fingers twitching at her sides like she was deciding whether to scream or faint. I had never seen her like that before. Marlene was always the composed one, the one who kept her voice even when she was furious, who negotiated car prices like she was playing poker. But right now, she looked cornered, exposed, and small. "You froze my cards?" she finally croaked. "You froze my—" "Wendell, are you serious?" I nodded. It didn't feel real until I clicked confirm. "But yeah, I'm serious." Her mouth opened and closed like she wanted to say 10 things at once. Then she pointed at the TV, which now showed a black screen. "So what now? You're gonna humiliate me? Send these to people? Post them online?" I frowned. "You think that's who I am?" She stared at me, and I realized she didn't know the answer. After 10 years of marriage, she couldn't answer that simple question, because she never bothered to ask it. "I'm not trying to destroy you, Marlene," I said, my voice hoarse. "I'm trying to understand when you decided I didn't matter." She took a breath like she was about to deliver some carefully structured defense, but stopped. Maybe because the truth was too ugly to polish. "It wasn't about you," she muttered, eyes darting toward the floor. "It was about me." I felt lost. "And you found yourself in someone else's bed?" I replied, feeling something sharp in my throat. "It wasn't just that," she snapped. "It wasn't just sex, okay?" I felt invisible here, like I was sleepwalking through this life we built. Invisible. That word hit harder than I expected, because I had felt that way too. For years. She just managed to act on it first. And worse. "I wasn't sleeping, Marlene," I said, quieter now. "I was trying. Every damn day." She folded her arms, suddenly cold. "So what, you're leaving me? Over one mistake?" I looked at her for a long time. That sentence clanged around my skull like a dropped wrench. "One mistake. I didn't leave you," I said. "You left first. You just didn't walk out the door to do it." Her voice cracked again. "So what are you going to do?" I didn't answer right away. I walked over to the table, picked up the envelope I'd set aside that morning, and handed it to her. Inside, a copy of the home deed with my name transferred into a trust, the legal freeze on our shared assets, and a printed list of her recent travel itineraries, none of which matched the locations she told me. She opened it, scanned the first few lines, and paled. "I'm not staying married to a ghost," I said softly. "And I'm not going to war either. But I will protect myself." And for the first time since she returned, her smile was completely gone, and I was finally calm. She didn't even finish reading the documents. Halfway through the first page, she dropped them on the table like they were burning her hands. Her eyes darted around the room, frantically searching for something familiar to hold on to. A moment ago, she was the confident woman in control. Now she looked like a stranger in her own home. "You can't just do this without talking to me first," she snapped, but her voice cracked on the last word. "I've been trying to talk to you for years," I replied. "You just never listened unless you thought I might leave." Her mouth tightened. She hated that I'd said it out loud. Hated even more that she couldn't deny it. Marlene always had a way of shifting conversations to make herself the victim. And for a while I bought into that. Every missed dinner, every cold shoulder, every time I asked if something was wrong and got a passive-aggressive shrug, I always thought it was me. That maybe I wasn't attentive enough. Not interesting enough. Not enough. But now I could see the truth. She didn't drift away because she was lost. She pulled away because she wanted to, and then she filled the space with someone else. That night, she slept in the guest room. Or at least that's where she stayed. I didn't sleep at all. I lay in our bed, my bed, staring at the ceiling with a weight in my chest that felt like a stone I couldn't cough up. Around 3:17 a.m., I finally opened my phone. I knew it was a bad idea, but I couldn't help it. I scrolled back through our call logs, the messages she never deleted, the photos she tried to hide in her private folder. And that's when I found it. A voice message. A 3-minute voice recording from a contact named C.D. Phoenix. I hit play. His voice was calm. Too calm. Like he thought it was romantic. "You looked incredible in the robe this morning. I can still smell you on the pillow. Can't wait till we're back at the resort. This time for more than a few nights." I paused it. My hands were shaking. My ears burned. That resort? We had planned to go there for our 10th anniversary, before she canceled it last minute, claiming a client needed her in Denver that weekend. She stole my trip and gave it to someone else. I walked down the hallway and opened the guest room door. She sat up instantly, wrapped in a blanket like she'd been waiting for judgment. I tossed the phone on the bed and said only one thing. Phoenix didn't sound very professional. Her face dropped. She reached for the phone with shaking fingers, but I walked out before she could open her mouth. For the first time, I didn't want to hear her excuses. The next morning, I made breakfast like I always do. Habit is a strange thing. It keeps you moving even when your world isn't. I cracked eggs into the pan, buttered toast, poured 2 cups of coffee. And yet, nothing about it felt normal. Every sizzle from the stovetop sounded louder than it should. Every clock tick, an accusation. I placed her mug on the table, the chipped one that said Boss Lady. She gave it to herself last Christmas. I don't know why I said it out. Maybe part of me still wanted to believe she was that version of herself. The one who built something, not the one who broke it. She came out of the guest room slowly, wrapped in the same blanket, wearing a different face. This one was softer, less combative. She sat down without speaking and stared at her plate like it might yell at her. "I listened to the rest," I said, stirring my coffee. She didn't ask what I meant. She knew. Her hands gripped the mug, knuckles pale. "He said he wants to take you to Vermont next. You always said you hated the cold," I added. She looked up at me finally. Her eyes were puffy, red-veined, rimmed with guilt or maybe exhaustion. "Wendell, I know what I did. But can you just not hate me? I don't think I can survive you hating me." That line landed hard. It sounded rehearsed but broken, like she'd practiced it 100 times and still couldn't say it right. "I don't hate you," I said. "I hate the version of you that pretended to love me while planning your escape route." She reached across the table like it was a lifeline, but I didn't move. "You could have just told me you were unhappy," I added. "Instead, you cheated and let me keep planning our anniversary trip like a fool." Her face twisted. "I was scared, okay? Scared if I told you the truth, you'd leave." I let out a bitter laugh. "And cheating kept me close?" She recoiled, and for a second I felt bad. But that feeling passed quickly. "You know what hurts the most?" I said. "It's not even the affair. It's that I had to prove it to myself. I had to become a detective just to learn the person I loved wasn't really there anymore." She wiped her face with a napkin, avoiding my eyes. "So what happens now?" I stood up and slid a manila envelope across the table. "These are legal separation papers. No court drama. Just a clean break." She stared at them like they were covered in thorns. "You've already signed them?" "I did," I said. "And there's a copy for your Phoenix friend, too, just in case he's still under the illusion that I'm clueless." She looked like she wanted to scream, but instead, she nodded barely and whispered, "I never meant for it to go this far." Funny thing was, I believed her. That didn't make it better. Later that same afternoon, she disappeared into the bathroom for almost an hour. I heard the water running but knew she wasn't showering. She was probably crying, or pacing, or staring at herself in the mirror, wondering how it came to this. I didn't go after her. I had nothing left to say that she hadn't already trampled over in her head. What came next wasn't up to me. It was her turn to face the consequences. I sat in the living room, flipping through a notebook I hadn't touched in months. Somewhere between doctor appointments and quiet dinners, I used to write. Just thoughts, observations, random details that helped me stay present when everything around me felt dull. I flipped to a page from over a year ago. A single line stared back at me. She started kissing me like it was a habit, not a choice. It hit harder now than it did when I wrote it. Around 5, the doorbell rang. Marlene emerged from the hallway wearing sweatpants and no makeup, which used to be my favorite look on her. Now it felt like camouflage, an attempt to look real again, like someone who hadn't spent the last year lying. "I'll get it," she mumbled. I followed her to the door, more out of reflex than curiosity. When she opened it, her face went pale. Standing on our porch was her father, Jonas. He didn't wait for an invitation. He stepped inside with the slow certainty of a man who'd rehearsed what he was going to say all the way over. Tall, silver-haired, and built like someone who'd spent decades not letting things slide. "I came to speak to both of you," he said, glancing at me and then her. "But mostly you, Marlene." She folded her arms. "Did Mom send you?" "No," he replied. "The man your husband hired to serve the separation papers did." She flinched. I hadn't told her I had the documents formally delivered yet. I planned to, but not so soon. Jonas looked at me and nodded, like he respected my decision even if he hated what brought us here. "Wendell, would you give us a moment?" I should have left the room. I should have let them talk in private. But I didn't move. "She lied in this house," I said quietly. "I think it's fair I hear the truth in it." Jonas didn't argue. He turned back to her. "I raised you better than this." Marlene's eyes welled. "I didn't mean." He cut her off with a single wave of his hand. "You didn't mean to get caught." Then came the line that stunned us both. "I saw the resort photos before Wendell did," Jonas said. "Your mother found them weeks ago when she borrowed your laptop." Marlene's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Jonas turned toward me, sighing deeply. I didn't say anything because I hoped she'd come clean herself. Clearly, that didn't happen. I stood in place, frozen in a swirl of shock and something close to betrayal. Her parents knew, and said nothing? Marlene sank to the couch, burying her face in her hands. For the first time, I saw regret. Not the performative kind. The kind that shows up only when you realize no one's going to protect you anymore. The silence that followed Jonas's words was unlike anything I'd ever heard in this house. No refrigerator hum, no phone buzz, just the sound of Marlene quietly unraveling in front of us. She didn't deny it. She didn't scream. She didn't even ask how long her parents had known. That told me everything. Somewhere deep down, she'd already been waiting for this day. She just hoped it would never come. Jonas turned to leave without another word. No hug. No comfort, not even a pat on the shoulder. I'd never seen a man look so disappointed in his own child. After he left, Marlene stared at the floor, completely still, like if she moved, everything would collapse. I walked into the garage and returned with a box. A plain, brown, taped-up thing I had hidden behind my tools for weeks. I had packed it long before I ever found the voice message. Long before I set up the security cameras. It was my safety net. I had called it my what-if box. But now it was just necessary. I placed it in front of her. She blinked, startled. "What's that?" "Your memories," I said. "The ones I don't want in this house anymore." Inside was everything she'd given me that used to mean something. Our anniversary cards, her first letter to me from college, the necklace I gave her on our second year together, the one she stopped wearing the day she met him. Even the brochure for the Vermont Inn we never made it to. I had kept all of it, and now I couldn't stand the sight of any of it. She reached toward the box, then paused. "Why did you keep these?" "Because I thought those moments were real," I said. "Turns out, I was just hoarding lies." Her lips quivered. "They weren't all lies, Wendell." "No," I admitted. "But the ones that mattered most were." She pulled the box onto her lap and opened the lid. I watched her eyes scan each item like she was flipping through someone else's past. She touched the photo of us at Lake Menorah, the one where she leaned her head on my shoulder while I grilled hot dogs. I remembered that day vividly, how I thought we'd cracked some unspoken level of peace in our marriage. But now, I couldn't remember if the smile on her face had ever been for me or just the camera. Marlene closed the box slowly. "You're really not going to try to fix this?" I shook my head. I spent years fixing things you didn't even tell me were broken. She didn't argue. She just sat there, the box in her arms, like she was finally holding the weight of everything she'd thrown away. 2 days later, she was gone. No dramatic exit. No suitcase-dragging breakdown. Just quiet footsteps in the early morning and a barely audible click of the front door. I didn't get up to watch her leave. I just laid there in the silence she left behind. And for the first time in months, it didn't feel suffocating. It felt clean. The separation papers were filed without resistance. Maybe she finally understood that no speech, no tears, no carefully worded apology could undo the choice she made. Trust isn't repaired by words. It's rebuilt by presence. And she'd been absent long before she physically left. I stayed in the house. People told me to move out, start fresh somewhere else. But I didn't want a clean slate. I wanted to reclaim this one. The walls that had heard lies would now hear peace. The kitchen that had seen her pour wine for someone else would now hold nothing but coffee, slow mornings, and the quiet kind of healing you don't post online. Weeks passed, then months. I started sleeping through the night. I found joy in the small things again. Jogging before sunrise, rearranging furniture, learning to cook something that didn't involve a microwave. And I started writing again, not just as a distraction, but as a way to remember who I was before I was her husband. One day, I found a letter in the mailbox with no return address. It was from her. Short, apologetic. She said she was trying to figure out who she was without hiding behind someone else's love. I didn't reply, not out of anger, but because there was nothing left to say. Sometimes the best closure is no reply at all. I never expected to feel lighter after everything. But I did. Not immediately, but gradually, like shedding a coat I didn't know I'd been wearing all summer. And one evening, as the sun set behind the trees and the wind carried the scent of lavender from the yard, I smiled. An honest, effortless smile. Not for anyone else. Just for me. That's when I realized. She may have returned from her business trip smiling, but the last smile in this story belonged to me. Thanks for watching Reddit Confessions. What was the moment in this story that shocked you most? Was it the hidden voice message? The box of memories? Or when her own father called her out? Let us know in the comments. And if you've ever trusted the wrong person, but still came out stronger, share your story below. We'll see you in the next one.